In today's video, I am going to be continuing with my Graphic 45 Seize the Day 12 by 12 layouts. So this is a series if you're just tuning in now. This is from page 10. We did 9 and 10 in the last video. We're going to do pages 11 and 12 in this one, but I'm going to be starting with page 10 here, flipping over onto the back side to page 11. We'll come in with page 12 here in just a few minutes, but starting here, I'm going to be taking this paper. So I have this 12 by 12 and I've cut it in half. So it's a 6-inch piece. And then I have cut this. So this is 10 1/4 inches. Now you'll want to save the piece across the top because we're going to use that later. Once it's 10 1/4 inches, we're going to cut this into 2 3-inch pieces. Now these are going to go here and here. And then I've cut a piece of this paper, same thing, 3 inches by 10 1/4 inches, and I'm going to be placing it here. Now when I put this on the page, I'm going to center this piece first, and then I'm going to take these 2 pieces and I'm going to center those with equal spacing between all of my pieces. Now I haven't inked my edges yet, so they will stand out a little bit more. And when I go to put these on, like I said, there's going to be an even border across the top and the bottom, and then even spacing between these pieces, just like this. Now I've got this piece here, the journaling card. I'm going to turn mine over to the back side, but if you like the look of just the journaling card, you could leave it on the other side to just see the picture. I'm going to have the journaling card turned this direction. Now, continuing with this paper, but I'm going to be using this side, I've cut one strip that's 4 inches by 12 inches. Then I've cut it into 3 pieces that are 4 inches each. And I'm going to be putting these here as my photo mats. And I'm going to be tucking these. I might tuck them, I could do them like this, or I might tuck them both underneath of this one. And then I've got my white photo mats that are 3 3/4 squares that I'm going to be placing here. If you have your photos already, you do not need to put this unless you want your photos to pop out. Your photos would be 3 1/2 by 3 1/2 if you mat them with the white. Or you cut them 3 3/4 and not use the white mat. So it really just depends on your personal preference. So I'm going to have my page like this. And then I think I'm going to add this border strip, but I'm not sure yet. So I'm going to come back in just a minute. I'm going to ink all the edges, and then I'm going to bring in page 12 before I actually put anything down. For page 12, I'm going to start with my starfish red solid paper as my background. And I am going to take 2 of my journaling cards. I've got the 2 that have the frames on them. I'm actually going to cut out these inside pieces here, and I'm going to be very careful when I cut them out because I'm going to use these on another page. So you don't want to cut through that. You want to be very careful that you just cut around the frame here. I'm going to leave this orange border on the frame, so I'm going to be cutting right around the inner part of that orange border on both of these. Now that I have my 2 frames, I've also got 2 white papers that are 4 by 6. So I'm going to make sure that the white isn't seen over my frame. So I want to make sure that they're definitely cut to the right size. I am going to leave the frames open, probably at the top, so that the photos can slide inside. And I'm going to be adding some different things from this page. So I'm going to first start with the signature Seize the Day paper. So I think this was over here and this was here. So I started by cutting off that border, this one here, across the top, and I left it intact. Like I said before, I'm probably going to use that on page 11. But I cut it to get to this piece here. So I wanted this border strip, and I've cut it down to 10 1/4 inches, leaving the orange paper on it. So it's going to be the same size as this, and it's bringing that turtle paper over onto this page, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to be placing it here, and then I'm going to be lining up the top and bottom edges of my frame with this. So it's going to be 10¼ inches for that. And then I have the paper. I mentioned when we cut these 2 pieces of the turtle paper that there was a strip across the top we were going to save and use. I'm going to be placing this in here between these 2 framed pieces. So again, it's bringing more of that turtle paper in here to help this flow together. Now, when I cut this piece, I actually cut straight down this edge of the postage stamp. So it did cut the white part off, but that's okay. I'm probably going to cut these out and use them on a different page. But once I had that cut, I didn't want to cut the turtle's face off, which is why I cut over into that. But then I didn't like that white piece on here, so I did trim. I did this on one of the other layouts we did earlier where I cut around the turtle's head. So I cut around, and then I cut around the arm a little bit too, and then I just went straight down that page. And I'm going to be putting this here. Now I am going to be centering this on my page so that there is a small space between all the papers, so those will all be centered too. So they are going to look just like this. Now, once I have all of these on the page, I do think this just needs something else, and that's where this border comes in. So I'm going to quickly cut this strip off the top so that I can see this better. And now when I have this, I think if I do that, it's actually, because I have the yellow here, it's bringing the yellow in, which is something that I really like too. And then I've taken these 2 fish from this fish paper I've been cutting from. I've taken the 2 fish that are actually on the piece over here, and I'm going to pop them up on chipboard so that they are raised up a little bit on this paper. And I may cut some more of those fish and add the fish here, and I'm going to probably focus on the yellow ones to try to bring some yellow into this piece on this, or on this page over here. So for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish inking the edges of some of the papers over here, but I'm going to adhere these papers down, and then I'm going to adhere these papers down. And remember, when you go to do this one, you'll only want to adhere down the very small section of the sides, a very thin line of adhesive down the sides and across the bottom, leaving the top open so that your photo can slide underneath on both of these framed pieces. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to add the chipboard here, and then I'll probably add some more things here. So if you want to hold off on doing this whenever I do it on camera, I also might add some stuff here as well. So we're going to start adding the details after all of these pieces are adhered down. Now I realized I didn't go through measurements before I mentioned I was going to be putting this paper down. So to make it easier on you, you'll want to measure over 3/4 inch to place your piece here. Now I put my red paper on and I centered it first, and then I measured over 3/4 inch and then 3/4 inch. And I marked these so that I knew exactly where to place these. And then at the top and bottom, it is also 3/4 inch. So you just want to have that 3/4 inch border all around and then 3/4 in between these pieces. Then for these, I measured down from the side 4¼ inches, and I have the corner of my red paper here, and then I've just slanted it until I liked the look of it to where you've got just a little tiny bit of the paper showing here, and it's all tucked underneath of here, but these are open for the photos to go under. Same thing here, 4¼ inches down, and I slanted it so that these look even. Then this one is, I believe it's 1 3/4. Yep, so I've measured down 1 3/4 from the top edge, and I have this one, and these are open so those photos will slide underneath of it. Then this one, I just eyeballed it, but it is 1 1/8 inch up from the bottom edge. And then for this piece here, I just put this on. If you want to know exactly where it is, it looks like it's about 5/8. Is that 3/8? Oh my gosh, I want to stick my head in the frame. It's 3/8. 3/8 inch down from the bottom edge. And then I've popped this up on chipboard just to give it a little tiny bit of dimension. Then I came over to this page here. I started with this strip. I measured 3/8 inch over, and then it is 3/4 inch top and bottom. I've adhered this one down, and then I came over here. I forgot to mention with this piece, I also cut this down to 10¼ inches. So I cut a little tiny bit off the top and then a little bit off of the bottom to get it to be 10¼ I've measured over 3/8 of an inch, and then I've adhered this piece down. Then all I had to do was center these. These are 3/8 of an inch as well. So I've got my frames here with the tops open, and I just used my ruler, placed my ruler like this so that this was straight across the bottom of the paper, and I lined it up here so that this was all nice and straight. And once I had this frame on, I did the same thing with the top of this frame, and then I've added this little piece here in the center. Now I've got my little fish here and here. I will be putting them on chipboard. Now I had originally cut this thinking this was the same seahorse, but it is not. I'm going to just put it down here, I think, and pop it up as well. And then I've cut these fish from the paper that I'm going to bring over onto this side. And I'm going to put this one here, and I'm going to put this one here, and then these ones I'm going to put down here. Or I might switch these up. No, I like them better the way I had it the first time. Okay. Maybe I'll tilt it that way a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I am going to be using little bits of chipboard, just like I've done in some of the previous videos. So I'm just going to cut a piece here, put it right underneath there so that that will pop that piece up. And all I'm doing is cutting a small enough piece for it to fit underneath of my fish piece, and then I'm going to make sure that it doesn't overlap on the white photo mats. Now for this one, I want to actually, I think I might adhere, I could do probably a tiny piece. I was thinking I was just going to adhere it down to the actual frame, but maybe if I get a little thin piece here, and I put it below there, I could do that. And then that piece that actually flew off, now I'm getting into tiny pieces. And that's all I really need is a little tiny piece to stuff up underneath of here, but to make sure that it's only on that little frame piece and nothing else. And then I will add piece over here, and then this large piece will work for that larger fish, and then maybe for my seahorse I'll just need another little tiny piece here just for the center to pop that up. So I am going to go ahead and adhere those down, and I think I'm going to just leave this plain. That way, if you have a title that you want to put on your page, this is where I would put the title on the page right here in this section, just to add to, because it's just that paper and it wouldn't be a big deal if you covered it up. I mean, you could put a title down here, but I don't feel like it would look as good as if you put your title here. Now for this layout, I am going to add some more of my chipboard pieces. So I've got a starfish here, here, and here. I've got some here, and I've got a turtle here and here. And what I'm going to do is, this is the only one that's over top of a white photo mat, so I want to make sure that I don't glue that piece down, but I'm just going to adhere it all down. This one, I'm not going to adhere this top one down because I don't want it to impede being able to slide the photo in there. So I'll just adhere the other 4 pieces down on this one, and everything else can be adhered solid down to my paper. Now these steps are extra, so if you don't have these embellishments, you don't have to use them, the chipboard pieces or things like the pearls, and you'll have beautiful layouts anyway. So don't worry about having these embellishments if you choose just to use the Graphic 45 paper collection. I am using some pearls. I've used these in other pages, and so I'm going to just add a couple of my pearls to this layout. Just like I've done previously, I'm going to add them just to my little fish here. And these are the Graphic 45 matte pearl gems. They are discontinued, but I have a lot of them in my stash, so I've been using them up. But you can use any kinds of pearls. And one thing that I've noticed about some of the pearls that I've gotten at some of the craft stores, if I just get the plain white ones, I use Sharpie markers to color them sometimes, which is kind of nice that I can just match them to my papers. And so I am using a lot of the little tiny pearls, so I've had to pull out multiple packs since I'm just using the silver ones. And over here, I'm going to put 2 on this one instead of the original 3 that I normally put. Well, that one's too big for that fish. And I think I'm gonna do 3 for this top one here. Again, it's all about that balance of numbers, where I personally feel like odd numbers tend to look better in clusters. So I try to do things in odd numbers. So I've got my 3 and my 2 here. And I think that is where I'm going to leave my layout. So here is page 11, minus the dog hair, don't mind. My dog is currently shedding a ton. And then here is page 12. I hope you have found this tutorial helpful and that you also check out the other tutorials if you haven't yet. And then stay tuned as we go on to pages 13 and 14. I'll see you in the next video.